Hey, welcome to Newspaper Breakdown. Some stuff to get through, as always. Gavin Williamson. Let's start with Gavin Williamson. He has resigned now, being the first to leave this series of "I'm fucking the country, get me out of here." He will pick up, though, over £16,000 as a severance package for the 2 weeks' work that he has done. So good for him, and nearly 3k in gross pay as well. This is the third time he has been sacked or forced to resign. So if we take into account, let's say it's not 16k every time, let's suggest it's maybe as low as 13 grand. That means for his resignations he has earned more than what is the average pay for someone for a year in this country for being incompetent. And the claims against him is that he has claims of unethical and immoral behaviour, and just from his severance pays he's probably earned over 30k for that, for when he allegedly leaked data. To the other times he's been sacked, to this one for bullying, over 30k. I mean, it's good if you can get it, isn't it? Fantastic if you can get it. You've got the Just Stop Oil protest from yesterday, which stopped the M25. At least 2 journalists with press passes, it should be added, were arrested by the police. So 2 actual fucking journalists with literal press passes proving that they are journalists were arrested by the police. Now, you can argue anything you like with this. You don't want to jump to fascism. But if you do start arresting journalists for doing their job when they have the credentials to be there, it's very difficult to, you could argue totalitarian, authoritarian, dictatorship, but it's not a dictatorship because we have what we pretend is democracy. So authoritarian, certainly. That's why it's so easy to go towards fascism with stuff like this, because it seems so much like it. A lot of this has to do with the police crime sentencing and courts bill that was brought out this year, that I actually talk about in my latest stand-up show that's on YouTube, but it was a terrible recording. Very good show, I think it's still a very good show, even with all of the bad stuff that happened. But I'm not a very successful comedian. I don't have tons of money. I'm not massively well known, so I only had one attempt to record it, and it was not a good one. But that's what happens. I can't do it over 2-3 days. I don't have the audience for doing it over 2-3 days. But the police crime sentencing and courts bill has put a lot more power in the hands of the police. And we've seen time and time again that the police are not the people you should be giving more fucking power to. Because now we get into a point where they're arresting journalists. You've got the nurses union, the RCN, is expected today to announce the biggest ever strike. Some, not all, hospitals are expected to take action, but this is the first national action over pay disputes by nurses. Nurses are looking for a pay rise of 5% above inflation, which, if we take inflation, I think it's around 14% now. So that's nearly a 20% pay rise that they're looking for. Salaries for nurses have fallen, in real terms, 20% since 2010. So you can argue that, yeah, they do deserve it. Of course, you've got the issue with, there's always the thing, where's the money coming from? Same place you gave all of the fucking money for all the VIP lanes during COVID, where you chucked away £37 billion to Dido Harding for some fucking reason. How about there? You've got the following on from the strike, you've got the new education secretary Gillian Keegan. She has brushed off reports nurses have to use food banks because of the cost of living crisis. This is it. We've now got hospitals have set up food banks in hospitals so nurses can eat. And you've got a multitude of surveys showing that nurses are not eating during their shift so that they are able to feed their children. This is where we're at. So the idea of giving them a pay rise doesn't seem that absurd, but Gillian Keegan has said, she said that people who need emergency help usually do so because they have suffered a broken relationship or boiler, which I'm not sure how long a Tory MP has to live under a rock, but they must they must be forced to before they're allowed out in the world, because they seemingly have no diggy about what's reality. Excuses constantly going on about, oh, actually no, it's not the cost of living crisis, it's because every single fucking nurse in the country has had a boiler broken or they've had a divorce. That's the reason. It's madness. The next step in the inquiry into Partygate scandal, which is the main part of that, is Boris Johnson lying to Parliament, which, I mean, I'm not doing the inquiry, but he did. He did lie to Parliament. The question is, did he do it because he's incompetent or because he's a lying son of a bitch? I think both. But that inquiry, the next phase, is being delayed as a result of government's failures to provide crucial evidence to MPs, meaning that they cannot move on to the oral stage where they start interviewing people in front of the committee until they get all of the information, all of the stuff that they've asked for. Now, they have done requests. These were 3 months ago, some of the requests for documents that they are yet to receive. And they do not want to start the oral sessions until they have all of the information, which makes sense, but they're being delayed by the government, by Tory MPs who don't want to give it out. You've also got the Institute for Fiscal Studies. They've got some new research out that shows inequality is growing in the UK, so good news for everyone there. It's saying that wealth had grown rapidly compared to earnings from work since 2008. 2008, of course, being the financial crash, where the world nearly exploded, which was one of the main reasons that we ended up voting Gordon Brown out, which brought in austerity, which put our productivity through the hole and made every part of our economy stagnate for 12 years, and we haven't particularly recovered. As I've said before, you do minus, plus, you're still in minus. That's how numbers work. And so wealth has risen or grown, driven by a surge in house prices and financial assets at a time of flatlining progress to the average wage. So as we've seen with house price costs, they keep on going up, meaning people who own one or multiple houses, their assets are worth more. You've got stocks and shares have been going up comparative to where they were. You own them, they tend to be owned by people who have the money to afford things, which is why when a recession happens, you've got everything goes down and falls, and then the rich still have money behind them to be able to buy everything cheaper. And so when it all comes flying back up, they've owned everything, that goes up, their wealth goes up, while the rest of us are fucked. This is causing a severe breakdown in social mobility, meaning that actually working hard for a living, you were told when you were young, all you got to do is work hard. That is no longer the case. So a breakdown in social mobility as inheritance grows in importance. I remember the Tories love to say Our government loves to say things like, if you want to afford a home, just wait for inheritance. Now, all of my grandparents have died, and unless it turns out that they were secretly pirates or criminals, they didn't leave me shit. And they won't do for the majority of people in this country, because inheritance only works for richer people. We can no longer be sure that the young will grow up with living standards that match the predecessors. Now, I'm 34, and I don't own a house. I live in a room. My parents could buy a house. They did have more disposable income. It was easier. You could have one person working and be able to afford a house and a family of two on one wage. You can't do that now. So as I say, hard work alone is now harder to get to the realms of the rich just through hard work. So going from like middle wealth to upper wealth, it's years extra added on to where it was even 20 years ago. So the idea of working hard and everything will be fine is a myth. Not only do you have to work hard now, but you have to work hard and hope to God that you win the lottery, or one of your parents or both your parents are rich, your grandparents are rich, and they leave you something, or you end up getting buggered by an MP who gives you money to be quiet or something like that. What's not going to help in the attempt to lower inequality or to shrink inequality is the plans that the government are doing for the budget, which is of course austerity 2.0, which is going to boom more tax rises with more service cuts, or public service cuts, which goes back to the previous of the NHS and why the nurses are going to be striking for the first time ever for a pay dispute. Because you've had the Tax Justice UK, which is a campaigning bunch. They suggest that Sunak could raise up to 37 billion through a string of taxes on the wealthy people. They won't do that, and they seemingly will never do that. I'm not sure why. I don't even think if Starmer came in he would do that. Starmer is seemingly on a daily basis proving himself to be as useless as they come, as competent as a fucking aglet. That's how I see no reason. There are so many open goals he seems to miss. I don't know how he keeps on doing it. We keep on talking about the balancing of the books. This is the whole reason for austerity 2.0. This was the reason for austerity in the first place. This is the reason that the Tories get hard of a morning. We need to balance the books. We have only balanced the books, I think, something like 6 times ever. We do not need to balance the books, as is continually argued. Austerity did not balance the books. This will not balance the books. What you need is to grow the economy, and you will not grow the economy with cuts. You just won't. Final news story, and it's a belter. Arconic, which is the company who made the cladding that spread the Genfell Tower fire, has completed their closing statement for the public inquiry into the fire. They said that there was more heat was released by the burning content of victims' flats than by their cladding, which, I mean, it's not a fucking argument. It's absolutely pointless. I think we'll find that things were hotter than our cladding, but it was the cladding that spread everything. That was It's already been proven. The inquiry has already shown that the cladding that they put on, this cheap shit that they spread and is still in multiple places, like over 1,000 different buildings up and down the country, that has nothing has been done about that yet. So we've got people living in basic matchboxes, that this cladding burnt like petrol fuel to spread the fire. So they're looking to move blame away from themselves into others. And they also said that 72 dead, of course, remember that, 72 actual victims. And they said that the company also said that if others involved in the refurbishment between 2014 and 2016, that if they're involved in the refurbishment, had properly read the safety certificates, no one would have died. So very likely no one would have died. So as I say, the inquiry has already found that the arconic panels primarily spread the fire. The inquiry does continue, and it will be interesting to see what happens. The main part you want from this inquiry is an apology, compensation for the victims that thus far hasn't come, compensation for those who are still alive that is slow to come, and for our government to take on every single suggestion that has come from this inquiry that they thus far haven't, because the inquiry came up with suggestions on how to improve things. I think it was either at the end of this year, the start of this year, or the start of last year, because this inquiry has been going on for a while. It came out and said, right, what you have to do, here's a way to improve things. You do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Government ignored it. Government ignored it all. And you're just there, go, well, how many more people need to die? How many more Genfells do we need? Because we shouldn't have had the first one. And if we have a second one, we're just going to start again. There's going to be a new inquiry, and fuck all's going to happen again and again and again and again, because it all costs money. All costs money. And they are willing to spend money if it can save people's lives. Because they don't have to worry about it, because they're fucking places. I mean, if we started cladding their homes with this shit, you'd see how quickly it changes. Anyway, right, well, hope you enjoyed it. I will speak to you tomorrow with more news. Maybe we'll have something on the US elections, and we'll have the final figures on that. Have a good one. Bye.